A 3-mile-long shingle spit backed by a freshwater lagoon.
Slapton Sands, really stunning. A long, curved, apparently sandy beach, and then separated by just the narrowest bit of land, this freshwater lagoon with reed beds all around. The houses on the spit look over both salt water and fresh, and the village of Tor Cross edges up the hill from which they have a view of the lagoon and the sea. A wonderful, unusual, beautiful combination.
Like many beaches that I've encountered on my southwest coastal adventure, this one was used as a D-Day training base, codenamed Exercise Tiger. It was here, in late April 1944, that 15,000 American troops practiced the Normandy landings. But by the time their rehearsals were over, hundreds were dead when their landing craft were ambushed and sunk by German E-boats hiding off the coast. And this tragic story might have died with them, as all surviving troops were then sworn to secrecy.
Dean. Hi.
Hello, Michael.
Let's take a walk on the beach.
The event was largely forgotten until 50 years later, when Dean's father brought it to light.
So, my dad, in around about 1969, he suffered a little bit of a nervous breakdown, and part of his recovery for that was to walk up and down Slapton Sands. And it was during those walks that he discovered bits of metal, shrapnel, and this is just an example of some of them, you know, these here.
There's a bullet in there.
Yeah, there's a bullet there, and you can still see the rifling on there.
Amazing.
And so that got him wondering, why am I finding this stuff on the beach? And then a good friend of his, a local fisherman, he told my dad of something that was on the seabed, approximately 3/4 of a mile out to sea, that they would often snag their nets on. And my dad said, well, what is it? Because the bay is mainly just shingle, there's very little rock. And he said, well, we don't really know. He said, we just avoid it. And so my dad took fisherman out in his boat, and he dived down, and he came up and he said to my dad, it's a tank. And my dad, I remember, famously said, you know, an oil tank, water tank. He said, no, it's a proper, it's a World War II tank.
Heavens, Dean, this is what your dad got out of the water.
Yes, this is the duplex drive Sherman tank that my dad recovered. It was absolutely covered in fishing nets. In fact, I think there were 5 or 6 conger eels living in it.
I mean, how could your father possibly have imagined that he could get a thing like this out of the water, a long way from shore, and onto shore? I mean, it's an inconceivable leap to me.
Yeah, I'm amazed what he managed to do, really. I think it was difficult. You know, the tank weighs around 32 tons, so the only way he could do it was to try and ease the weight of the tank, using big airbags, and that would give a little bit of buoyancy and then really slowly tow the tank in behind the diving vessel. He was concerned that when it got onto solid ground, that when he moved it, everything would start to disintegrate. But in reality, the opposite happened. It started to move on its own tracks. Maybe that was the tank saying, okay, I'm going to give you a hand here.
An amazing story.
My dad's efforts, once the tank was recovered, went into working with the American government to have officially dedicated memorials given both Army and Navy.
And we're surrounded by those lovely memorials and plaques right here.
Yeah.
I mean, the tank then, of course, is a memorial to the men who lost their lives. It's also, oddly enough, a memorial to your father too.
Yeah, I feel so. I mean, this really was his world. He was here every single day, other than Christmas Day. He even had his post delivered here. He spoke to thousands of people, and I think that everyone associated the tank with my dad. I mean, he had names such as, the Tank Man, and in fact, his last request to me was, take me to the tank one more time. And so when we drove him to his funeral, we pulled into the car park and we stopped at the tank, and myself and my wife, we got out and laid some flowers on the tank for my dad.
I've arranged to visit a very special sanctuary at Slapton Ley on the edge of the lagoon, which is the largest freshwater lake in southwest England, covering 70 hectares of open water and reed beds.
Hello, excuse me.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
How are you?
What lies within the sanctuary?
Well, it's the Ley. It's run by the Field Centre here at Slapton, and yeah, it's a beautiful natural reserve. It's called Island Bay, and we're not really supposed to go past here as a sanctuary zone for the herons and the otters.
Where are you from?
I'm from New Zealand. Actually, I've only been here 3 months.
So how come you got the key to the sanctuary?
Well, there's 9 of us, international students, all have sought refuge in Slapton. During the lockdown, we've been doing a bit of volunteer work as a bubble, and it's just been a total lifesaver. Seeing the wild garlic pop up, the primroses, the daffodils come in early.
There's a bird called the bar-tailed godwit, I think it's called, which commutes between Alaska and New Zealand's North Island. Have you come across
Yes,
this bird?
I've heard. Yes, I have.
Yeah, I think it's the longest migration of any creature. But I don't recommend it to you, particularly if you don't fly.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. Might take me a bit longer.
Now that we're getting on so well, is there any chance you'd...
Only because you asked so nicely.
I'll go very quietly for the heron.
Perfect. Enjoy.
Feels like a sort of enchanted walk. The sort of thing you'd find in a children's story. Birdsong gets louder and louder the more I pause. Gorgeous. No wonder this is called the sanctuary. There's acres of reed bed. Unimaginable numbers of creatures must dwell here. And completely undisturbed.
The reserve covers 215 hectares and is home to all manner of plants and wildlife, like dormice, bats, otters, and a small protected bird called a Chetty's warbler, which thrives near wetlands like these.
Here the forest has a magic carpet of wild garlic. The scent of it is everywhere, and it's just coming into flower. Lovely, soft flavour of garlic. I never saw anything like that. Never.
I've heard that these woods once belonged to a house that was abandoned during the Second World War, at the time of those fateful D-Day exercises.
Well, all in fulfillment of the prophecy beyond the wild garlic forest, the ruined house. house has a divine view over the reed bed. Must have been a lovely place. It's been heartbreaking to be required to leave it for the war effort. And evidently, no one ever returned to see that wonderful view again. During the COVID pandemic, people kept saying that we'd made sacrifices that had no comparison since the Second World War. And I understand what they mean, but no one was required to give up their house. No one was required to give up an entire village to sacrifice a lovely home like this and never again to see a prospect like that.
My walk this morning continues for another 2 miles onto one of this coast's most enchanting beaches, sheltered by a Californian woodland. From there, I'll continue over rugged headlands and coves before my South Devon adventure ends at Blackstone Point, overlooking the Dart River estuary, which was formed during the last ice age.